Come on in, guys. Welcome to Idled Out, where we talk all things Survivor. My name is Luke, and today we're talking about 5 times Survivor didn't even bother trying to hide who the boot is. Generally on Survivor, going into Tribal Council, the show's done its due diligence to show us reasons why at least 2 people might get voted out. So there's some sort of suspense. A boot and a decoy boot. Sometimes there's an idol in play that might cause an upset, even if the target is obvious. Even if it's an incredibly obvious boot, like during a pagonging, we're still given a secondary target, even if there's only like 1% chance they go home, so that we don't change the channel out of boredom. And yet, a handful of times in Survivor history, they didn't even bother creating any mystery about who was going home. By the time we're heading off to Tribal Council, the audience already knows who's going to get voted out. There's no decoy boot, no idols in play to upset things. The audience knows to a 100% degree of certainty who's getting their torch snuffed. This leads to an obvious question. Why? Why would a show built largely on the suspense of someone leaving the game permanently decide to not have the whole suspense part? Well, sometimes there are extenuating circumstances, sometimes they just want to fast forward to something more interesting, most often they just want to dunk on the person going home. Those are my favorite. Before it even comes up, I won't be covering either Varner in Game Changers or Brandon in Karamoan, despite those both being rather obvious, because I think both of those were essentially ejections with the vote as a formality, and I don't really find it appropriate to joke about either situation. Anyway, okay, all that said, let's dig into 5 times Survivor didn't even bother trying to hide the boot. At number 5 is Willard in Survivor Palau, the only Karor player eliminated pre-merge, and only because both tribes were forced to go to Tribal Council. If you've watched a lot of Survivor, or any reality elimination show, you're probably aware that when someone who's been invisible for most of the season suddenly starts getting a ton of screen time at the beginning of the episode, things probably aren't going to go super well for them. One of my favorite examples of this editing technique is Willard, who was almost completely invisible for the first 4 episodes of Palau, then all of a sudden the talk of the town in episode 5. Literally every scene we see at Karor before the immunity challenge revolves around Willard. Primarily, Tom's ever-increasing irritation with Willard, Greg's ever-increasing irritation with Willard, Willard's ever-increasing affinity for the hammock, and how much Willard looks like the immunity idol. So when it comes time for Karor to talk about who to vote out at their first and only pre-merge Tribal Council, everyone's gunning for Willard. Even Willard. An alternate vote is never even brought up, as Willard basically throws in the towel and even offers to let Kobe have his pants.
What's up, big boy? Just came by. I think I'm going tonight. Can you fit into my shorts?
Not sure what funhouse mirrors you're looking in, Willard, but you guys aren't exactly the same size. I assume that Willard's boot was fast-tracked because Oolong was going to their 37th Tribal Council shortly after, where the dynamic was much more interesting, and we'd be saying goodbye to a much more beloved character in Angie. Normally, the lead-up to Tribal Council would be filled with the obvious boot scrambling to save themselves, but not here. Instead, we get a lengthy scene where Greg and Kobe discuss blindsiding Tom and Ian at Final 7, which, let me remind you, we're currently at the Final 14. The lead-in to Tribal Council is a voiceover from Greg about a plan that can't even happen for at least 5 or 6 episodes. Wow, I'm on the edge of my seat over here. At number 4 is Astronaut Dan in Survivor Exile Island. When the Lamina tribe lost the final pre-merge immunity challenge, it was pretty clear that Sally was toast. She's the only woman on this tribe, she's the only one not really in this main alliance, and Kasaya's sending her to Exile Island, so she's immune. Back at Lamina, Dan and Nick are at a strategic stalemate over who to vote out, both fearing the tribe is gridlocked 2v2, with Austin and Nick on one side and Terry and Dan on the other. The dynamic is explosive.
Unless somebody's ready to go, it's going to probably be 2v2.
It's true. We're going to have to sort that out, because 2v2 gets kind of sketchy.
We see what's going on over at Kasaya. With Sally immune from the vote, Austin and Nick petition Terry to take out his closest ally, a man whom he greatly admires, respects, and has a ton in common with. And Terry puts his foot down and reluctantly agrees Dan Fuego's got to fuego. Terry actually informs Dan that he's a goner before Tribal Council, and Dan takes ownership for his failure in the challenge and accepts his elimination with dignity and grace. There's absolutely no mystery at all here, and instead a lot of the drama of the episode comes from Terry's internal conflict over voting out a close friend. This is a pretty unique episode in Survivor history. It's essentially the opposite of a downfall episode. While Dan still gets the boot, obviously, instead of a full episode dunking, much of the episode is spent exploring what a genuinely wonderful human being he is, an astronaut and a true American hero. He even salutes the 3 guys who just voted him out as he exits the game, and as corny as it is, it's enough to warm my cold and cynical heart. Aww. At number 3 is Alicia, voted out in episode 4 of Survivor Go Wrong. Okay, so the first 25 minutes of this 42-minute episode are spent at the reward challenge, where Debbie and Sydney both nearly pass out, and Caleb is medically evacuated from the game after literally almost dying. While undoubtedly one of the most dramatic things to ever happen on this show, and rightfully deserving of an episode almost entirely dedicated to it, this doesn't leave us a lot of time to spend at camp to explain who goes home, especially considering we have to fit an immunity challenge in here somewhere. And when we do see what's going on at the Braun tribe, things aren't looking good for Alicia.
You've never been on a team in your entire life, and you're trying to tell an NBA champion how to be a teammate.
Just because I haven't played in the NBA doesn't mean...
What team have you ever been on?
At the challenge, Braun loses, and Jeff gives the tribe the opportunity to just go straight to Tribal Council, since it's abundantly obvious that Alicia is getting voted out. But she objects, so they're sent back to camp, which we don't even see. Yep, even though they apparently do go back to camp, we just go straight to Tribal Council, where there's 5 minutes left, and even Jeff says this is the most obvious Tribal Council he's ever been to.
Alicia, I think you're going to be voted out tonight. I don't think there's any chance they're voting anybody else out. I don't know if I've ever seen a tribal that was this clear cut.
Had the reward challenge not taken up more than half the episode, we might have seen a will she won't she plotline about Sydney forcing a tie or something. But given the Caleb circumstances, there's no mystery as to who's getting kicked off, and the show just yada yadas through any attempts Alicia might have made to save herself, as well as most of Tribal Council. It all coalesces in one of the most obvious Tribal Councils in history, where Alicia is voted out and Scott and Jason take a victory lap, having finally conquered, after 11 long days, the biggest and most dangerous threat in the game, Alicia. Good work, fellas. At number 2 is Randy's boot episode in Survivor Gabon, essentially an entire episode dedicated to dunking on the King of Gabon. Here we go, a truly classic downfall episode. Every scene in the episode perfectly works towards the end result. One of the most humiliating vote-offs in Survivor history. At Final 8 of Gabon, Randy, Corinne, and Bob are all that's left of the Onion Alliance, and things are getting kind of desperate. There's a ton of tension at camp, but the drama really starts at the auction, where Randy buys cookies for the tribe, offers one to Sugar, who rejects it, splits Sugar's cookie into 2 to give to Corinne and Maddie, then again offers his own cookie to Sugar, who accepts it and then gives it to Maddie. Are you following this? It's very important. Randy got screwed out of his own cookie. Enough is enough. His revenge plan? Dial up his personality like 5%.
The plan is for me to act really nasty, continue to mix it up with everybody, and the old Fong people are going to vote for me. Our only prayer is if Bob would give me the idol.
Randy's strategy is actually pretty good here. Be unpleasant enough to goad votes onto yourself, then play Bob's idol. Only Bob doesn't have an idol. He only has a fake one that he made, which he told Sugar about for some reason. Yeah, better not bank that fake idol to bluff later. Good call. Sugar plays the devil on Bob's shoulder, convincing Bob to give Randy the idol for no real reason other than to utterly humiliate him, which Bob goes along with. I'm not sure which is more ridiculous, that Bob thinks that he has nothing to lose by giving Randy a fake idol to play with the sole objective of making his own ally look completely foolish, or that Randy actually votes for Bob to win at the end anyway because he hates Sugar and Susie even more. This is some pretty insane manipulation on Sugar's part. It's crazy to think about how good of a player she could have been if she wasn't committed to just playing spoiler, burning the entire game down, and salting the earth afterwards. Going into Tribal Council, there's literally no mystery as to what is going to happen. Randy's going to play that fake idol, and he's going to be voted out in hilariously embarrassing fashion. We get 3 of the most famous voting confessionals in Survivor history, Sugar's infectious laughter when Randy plays the idol, and Randy's face when he realizes he's been outfoxed by Bob and Sugar of all people. All this over a plate of cookies. Please, bring back the auction. The most obvious boot in Survivor history is Roger in Survivor Amazon. The gold standard for episodes where they don't even bother trying to hide who's going home, the granddaddy of downfall episodes, and one of, if not the, most satisfying eliminations in Survivor history. One of the major pre-merge plotlines of Amazon is just how out of touch Roger is. He's bossy, he's condescending, and he goes into drunk uncle at Thanksgiving mode far too often.
As long as they don't bother me, I don't give a damn. I don't like to see him flaunting it, though. I mean, that... You like to see 2 guys out in the street?
Doesn't bother me at all.
Making out and all that? That doesn't bother you at all?
No, could care less.
Shout out to Rob, and especially Alex, for being woke all the way back in 2002. When we get to the merge of Amazon, it's no surprise that Roger interrupts the merge feast as everyone's mid-beer to insist that they start building the shelter post-haste, and to dump all the beer out of their ice chest so that they can instead freeze their leftovers. A truly terrible idea. Roger, have you ever had a warm Coors? By nightfall of merge day, pretty much everyone's on board with voting out Roger. The men have been increasingly annoyed by him for 3 weeks, and the women quickly realize Roger will never vote for a woman to win the game, so best to get him out before the jury begins. Then, to really twist the knife in his own back, Roger wakes a bunch of hungover people up at dawn by chopping wood and clanking the machete around. We get confessional after confessional from almost every player in the game, not only talking about voting Roger out, but gleefully celebrating his impending demise. In fact, they're trash-talking Roger so much that they've got to double up in the confessionals just to maximize the amount of Roger bashing we get to see.
The fact of the matter is, Roger's first. Well, Roger's the second. No, he's first on the list now. The list has changed.
Okay.
He was being an ass earlier, so Roger's going to be voted on. Unless he wins individual immunity, he'll be the first one to go.
This is the first time Survivor ever completely telegraphed who was getting voted out, without any mystery or suspense whatsoever. The whole episode is dedicated to just how much everyone dislikes Roger, juxtaposed with Roger bragging about just how much he's got this in the bag. Am I so out of touch? No, it's the children who were wrong. Got nothing else for ya. To help me get some big chocolate chip cookies and warm Coors Light, like and subscribe, and I'll get you more Survivor content just like this. Until next time, don't get idled out.